talk about James Upchurch III, who was a great-grandson of Michael Upchurch I, the first Upchurch to come to America from England. Now, as a great-grandson of Michael Upchurch I, he was one of four individuals who had what we call a branch of the Upchurch family in America. His place in the family is well fixed because of various kinds of information we have, which I'll share with you today. This particular individual was a wealthy individual because he owned over 700 acres of land at the time of his death. He was also what we call a patriot, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. People became patriots in different ways in the Revolution. Of course, if you served in the Revolution as a soldier, you were a patriot, and forevermore your descendants could be claimed to be a son of the American Revolution or daughter of the American Revolution. But there were other cases in which people became patriots and were declared to be so because of goods that they furnished. In some case, they furnished these goods willingly, in other case, they had them taken from them. In this particular case, with James Upchurch III, he became a patriot and is so recorded because he fell under the arrangement whereby the governors of the state could declare that the goods of an individual could be taken from them, whether they agreed to or not, for the service in the Revolution. And it turns out that James Upchurch III showed up about 1781 to make a claim because he had lost, under this claim arrangement, a bridle and a saddle and I believe a horse. He was paid £2 for that, and that forevermore entitles his descendants to claim that they descend from a patriot of the American Revolution. Let's look at the 5-generation chart for the family in America, showing the first 5 generations, and see how he fits into the family. Here you see that he is the son of John Upchurch I, the grandson of Richard Upchurch I, and the great-grandson of Michael Upchurch I. And we show there on that level that he exists the 3 other individuals who are heads of branches in the family. We know he is a solid member of the family because of various things that happened that gave us information. For example, his father sort of wandered about from place to place, but we know in 1756 that James Upchurch III was called upon in court to summarize his father's assets and to try to deal with a lawsuit in which his father owed money. The courts decreed that John Upchurch III should not only inventory his father's property, but should sell it to pay his debts. This same John Upchurch II was at one point found in New Kent County, Virginia, which is north of the James River. That's another story we'll tell at another time. It's one of the rare occasions in which the Upchurches ventured north rather than moving south and west. But at any rate, we soon find James Upchurch III presence in Brunswick County, Virginia, and there we have adequate records that show that he fit into the family in a very structured way because of the land that he acquired, because of his will, and because of other information such as people that live next to him or the requirement that he serve in the county in various ways. He was born in 1724 in Brunswick County, Virginia, and died there in 1784, living out his entire life of 60 years in that county. His children were all born there between 1740 and 1756, and they all left the county in due course. It's another story of we having a good Upchurch record in Brunswick County, Virginia, but the descendants have moved away from this great heritage. Let's look at a specialized map of Virginia, which shows Brunswick County, Virginia, where he was born and raised and died. But I want to go through another aspect of this, leading to the fact that this particular part of the Upchurch family lived in the southernmost part of Brunswick County, Virginia. And let's look at a map of that particular part of that county, because we'll have to return to this from time and time again. In this particular southeastern part of Brunswick County, Virginia, we see that a place where James Upchurch III lived out his life and where he had land, and I will identify for you some pieces of that land. In 1753, he acquired 400 acres through a land grant. Now, this was especially informative because the land grant itself specified that his father was John Upchurch. So here is another slight place in the records where we find a record of how two generations linked together, James being the son of John. He also, in 1764, purchased 310 acres of land in that same southeastern part of the county, and in 1781, a 57-acre piece of land. These pieces will appear several times further because he bequeathed those to members of the family. We then conclude, based on this land, that he was a wealthy individual. You might go beyond this, knowing that he owned slaves and that he had a plantation, which we assume would be a very productive plantation. As we move along, we take note of the fact that in this southeastern part of Brunswick County, Virginia, there are two streams that flow. There is the Nottoway stream flowing through the northern part of the county, and in the southern part, the Meherrin stream, and then below that, a stream called Fontaine Creek. Now, I think the Upchurch land lay probably between Fontaine Creek and Meherrin Creek, and you will note that there's a spot between the two creeks where there would be flat and level land, and that would be productive land. And I'm just guessing, as we do more research, we'll find out that that's where this Upchurch land was located. We always like to hear about wealthy members of the family because they create a record in terms of land transactions, but also serving the community in other ways. But one of the most profound pieces of information we have from John Upchurch III has to do with his will. And he wrote that will in 1784. He must have known that he was near the end of his life because he died only a month later. So here was an individual thinking, I'm not long for this earth, so let me sort of see what I'm going to do with my goods. And as we reported, he had a considerable amount of assets. Now, he gave land to his son John Upchurch III, who shortly moved to Chatham County, North Carolina. He gave land to his son Harmon, who shortly moved to Montgomery County, North Carolina. And to James Upchurch IV, who left the Brunswick County as well, he did a strange thing. He didn't give him land, but he loaned him land. Now, we have to read between the lines and see what this means. One suspects that the father of James Upchurch IV did not trust his son to take care of his assets, so he loaned him this land, saying that after he died, then it would go to grandson Burwell Upchurch. There was another bequeath to a grandson, to John Upchurch VII, now the son of John Upchurch III. Now, this particular piece of land was a 57-acre tract, and it helps us document how the family all fits together, because later, when John Upchurch III was living in Chatham County, North Carolina, he sold that particular 57-acre piece of land. And it's nice that it was 57, an odd number, because it helps us be more sure that this links now the Upchurches of Chatham County, Virginia, Chatham County, North Carolina, to the Upchurches of Brunswick County, Virginia. Now, he had two daughters, Selah and Edith, and they, by this time, were married to Mosley brothers. and he didn't give them any land. Now, you can sort of rationalize this because perhaps James Upchurch III thought, here are my two daughters, well married with husbands that can take care of them, and I don't have to give them land. He did mention them in his will because he indicated that daughter Selah would receive 1 slave and daughter Edith would receive 1 shilling. This is a trick in the writing of wills. You don't want the child to come back and contest the will and say, well, he completely forgot about me. He meant to include me, but he forgot me. Whereas if you give the child 1 shilling, that's not a lot of money, but it documents that you didn't forget them. This is what you wanted them to have. Well, there's certainly a lot more to learn about John Upchurch III, and particularly this southeastern corner of Virginia, and we should be looking into that in much more detail. And how do we do that? Well, we can look at references in the literature to things like names, neighbors, or people who sold them the land, that is, who owned the land before they did. We can look at the names of streams, and streams sometimes change their name, but if we're skillful and lucky and diligent enough in our research, we will always, the stream doesn't leave, it always stays there. It may have a different name. So over time, we would hope we can place the more precise location of this Upchurch land in southeastern Virginia, in southeastern Brunswick County, Virginia, by studying the records, the names, the streams, the sales record, and other records. We look forward to telling you about other parts of the Upchurch family in due course.